have their favorite suttas, but I would say there's actually more solid content in the Anguttara than any of the other three. You get these very, very short, sort of pithy, precise, like smaller in length sutra arrangements. But especially if you've got a device where you can do, like I say, a text-to-speech function, it's going to be very, very useful. Where if you can play in your car when you're going to work, and you can absorb a lot of very useful material in a very short space of time. So what I'll do is, as I go through each of these shorter suttas, I'll give you guys plenty of time to come in at any point. So I'll just move slowly through, like from paragraph to paragraph, and I'll just stop for just a short space. And if you guys don't give any input, then I'll give my blessed opinion and on the material, and then we'll move on. And then as we come to the end of each sutta, then I'll just check you again if you've got any points, any opinions. It doesn't have to be necessarily directly related specifically to the sutta, because you can have. So on the level of the mind, you can read a sutra and it can actually trigger thoughts and memory connections in other areas. So don't be shy, to come up with absolutely anything whatsoever. Even if you think it's super of no incredible significance, it might be of incredible significance to the rest of us. So I'll just read it through one paragraph at a time. So point 1, Peril, the fool. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Natana Pindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, those bhikkhus replied, the Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, whatever perils arise, all arise on account of the fool, not on account of the wise person. Whatever calamities arise, all arise on account of the fool, not on account of the wise person. Whatever misfortunes arise, all arise on account of the fool, not on account of the wise person. Just as a fire that starts in a house made of reeds or grass burns down even a house with a peaked roof, plastered inside and out, draft-free with bolts fastened and shutters closed, so too whatever perils arise, all arise on account of the fool, not on account of the wise person. Thus, bhikkhus, the fool brings peril, the wise person brings no peril. The fool brings calamity, the wise person brings no calamity. The fool brings misfortune, the wise person brings no misfortune. There is no peril for the wise person. There is no calamity from the wise person. There is no misfortune from the wise person. So, just in this first section, that this whole business with the behavior of the fool and the wise person, you can take it in like a number of say like radiations, because you can have a person through especially like wisdom. When you look at the person who's wise and a person who is lacking in wisdom, because you're looking at grades of individuals. That you don't have a person who's you have, say, the wisdom faculty of the arahant is as advanced as it gets, and as you move down from the top, say from the top perspective of say insight, sila, and the refinement of the mental faculties. And we move down the range, and the people at different levels of enlightenment, and the people at different levels within the world that we see, we're going to see a mix of both, both like energies and dispositions and intentions, which can, some can be based in say, reasonably, say, sensible behaviour, and some may be considered, just sort of quite sort of outrageous and quite harmful. So you're looking at a mix of qualities in an individual. There's not like a black and white perspective here. And when you look at like almost like a circle of radiation from the individual, moving out to the family structure, circle of friends, community, and across the country, and then on a global level, you're looking at, say, for example, people who may be in very, very powerful positions of responsibility and influence and potential wealth. Largely wealth and power tends to go together, regardless of circumstances, in a general sense. But when we look at the say within the political and even the military arena, we have these so-called highly intelligent people. People who've have got very, maybe very well educated and are supposedly quite competent and can take care of their responsibilities and duties in the area of their domain. But the way, the kind of decisions that they make and the intentions they have, the way they move within their particular career circle or path may not be considered wise from our perspective, because especially even politicians are known to be wheeler dealers. They're known to be quite manipulative and two-faced, and they adjust themselves. They're like chameleons, adjust themselves according to circumstances. So intellectually, these people may be very, very bright, very, very sharp, very capable, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually have a significant component of wisdom. They've got to have a degree, say like a minimum degree of wisdom to maintain that kind of position. But because of what they have to deal with on a peripheral level, they can't essentially maintain, say, like a wholesome standard of behaviour and personal practice within their arena, because it just essentially just doesn't work. If you're an absolutely pure and honest politician, you usually don't last very long. Your opponents are more than happy to just take you to pieces, because it's a very, very competitive, very sort of cutthroat type of career path. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should train yourself thus. We will avoid the three qualities possessing which one is known as a fool, and we will undertake and practice the three qualities possessing which one is known as a wise person. It is in this way that you should train yourself. So we're looking at the characteristics of the individual. Bhikkhus, the fool is characterized by his actions. The wise person is characterized by their actions. Wisdom shines in its manifestation. Bhikkhus, one who possesses three qualities should be known as a fool. What three? Bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, and mental misconduct. One who possesses these three qualities should be known as a fool. One who possesses three qualities should be known as a wise person. What three? Bodily good conduct, verbal good conduct, and mental good conduct. One who possesses these three qualities should be known as a wise person. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should train yourself thus. We will avoid the three qualities possessing which one is known as a fool, and we will undertake and observe the three qualities possessing which one is known as a wise person. It is in this way that you should train yourself thus. So has anyone got any opinions on this, on the bodily, verbal and mental, both good and bad conduct? Anyone got an opinion on that? So when you look at these modes of behaviour, so when we look at the human being, the way they perform their volitional action, moving out from the level of the mind, the person begins with intentional volition on the level of thought, which is emotional thought driven by feeling. As all of you are well aware, that thought in itself can be quite neutral, but it's coloured and it's driven by your emotional makeup. Because if all of you guys were emotionally very, very cool, your thought processes in themselves would be like quite neutral in a sense, but maybe neutral, but because of the purity of the mind, you are naturally imbued with a degree of insight and understanding. Because the person who's very, very hot-tempered, who's very volatile and very impulsive, even for example, you get a person who could be like a sociopath, a psychopath, who may be incredibly sharp, intelligent. They have the ability to assess situations and to really size people up very, very quickly. Very, very cunning, manipulative, resourceful personality. That person can be. This is what they say, but I argue this point. They say that that true. So you get say a true psychopath. These people who are of the for choice of better words, of the worst grade, who are people who have murdered, who have abused, who've tortured others, who've committed horrendous crimes on multiple occasions. And some professional people, psychologists and therapists, have mentioned this, and it's a bit hard to understand. They say these kind of people, the people in the extreme category, have no feelings. It's quite a funny statement. They are emotionally cool, like cold, and they have no feelings whatsoever. But the thing is, if your mind is quite cool and quite, for choice of better words, it's like there's a degree of stability, calm. It's, you meet people who can be very very emotionally cool, but people in that category, in order to take a person's life or really violate or hurt another human being, you've got to have the volition, where you really want to harm someone and you want to gratify and enjoy the power and the almost like the sadistic pleasure which comes from that process. So it's quite strange, because I've heard that on a number of occasions, but I argue that particular point. And these people who were, I won't sidetrack too much, the people in this category, the vast majority of them underwent really very high levels of prolonged parental abuse, especially from the mother, and the vast majority of these individuals, specifically males, were subjected to extreme psychological and physical violence by the mother. These are the people, and the father to a degree, but the mother has quite a lot of impact in this area, and this is what leads to this kind of very very dangerous and abnormal mentality. Even though these people can be very sharp, very skillful, they can dodge and weave. They can basically escape the police for 5, 10, even 15 or 20 years till they're eventually caught. So that there's a degree of sharpness of intellect, even wisdom, because they're learning and understanding. They're like they're sort of like playing games with the police, like cat and mouse type of scenario. But the underlying personality, it's quite corrupt. It's quite criminal in nature. Even though you wouldn't consider them like truly wise on any level, but there can be a very, very high degree of intelligence with these particular personalities. So you see that principle on the level of volition, thought, intentional action, like moving out from the mind, that energy moving out from the first stage and then into speech, and under, say potentially intense scenarios, maybe into bodily action. It could be either, say, wholesome or unwholesome. So within our particular system of training, that, say for example, we have a wholesome thought, we try to check the mind very, very quickly. As soon as an unwholesome thought arises, have the awareness that say like an unwholesome volition is basically is moving in the mind, arising, and the faster you can catch that mind state, the more potential you have is to keep that in check. And so we're able to, if you're quite sharp, as soon as you feel maybe some, you may have possibly a disagreement with someone, or maybe an incredibly strong opinion on an issue, and you see the mind state arising. But if you want to potentially maintain a sense of civility with someone, you actually keep the speech in check, before you break out into maybe see like one's own views and opinions. And so you're looking at different scenarios, but you can if you catch it early, you can say put the checks in place before that intention just goes right out and takes place with manifesting bodily action. So that point 3, thinking. The fool has these 3 characteristics of a fool, marks of a fool, manifestations of a fool. What 3? Here, the fool thinks badly, speaks badly, and acts badly. How would wise people know of them? This fellow is a fool, a bad person, but because the fool thinks badly, speaks badly, and acts badly, wise people know of them. This fellow is a fool, a bad person. These are the fool's 3 characteristics of a fool, marks of a fool, manifestations of a fool. But then, as you'd be well aware, you're looking at grades of, supposedly grades of fools, because you're looking at a mix of wholesome, unwholesome qualities. But one of the main differences between the fool and the wise person is just the level of insight and personal understanding. So if I was engaging with other people, and I had very, very little awareness of the effect of my thoughts, my speech and actions on others, I may behave in an anti-social manner. I may behave in an antagonistic or even a cruel manner towards others, because you're looking at it. It's not like cut and dried. You're looking at underlying wisdom, insight, but you're also looking at peripheral awareness. You're looking at awareness within your own mind state, the way your mind is moving, the direction, and the effect it's got on others. People who are, especially Buddhist people who develop that natural sensitivity, that natural, like intuition at least to a small degree, they're able to understand and connect with other people much more effectively, and they've got this awareness how their behaviour affects others, and if I move in this particular direction, there's going to be certain effects. But you can get people who are incredibly sensitive to their own needs, their own disposition, their own perspective, views and opinions, but they are completely insensitive to others, and that can almost be like even with good parents, that can still be considered a kind of dysfunctional mentality, because people who connect really well with others, who are well adjusted, they have this self-awareness, and also they're very aware how their behaviour and how their behaviour actually affects others. Mm.
So, for me, listening to that, what I'm hearing is, like, I understand sometimes people, if they are trained, when somebody is trying to express an emotion or a feelings on something, they may go at it personally. I don't like you because, or whatever like that. However, if somebody has a self-awareness, they may be able to go outside of the personal attack and hear underneath what that person is really saying. I didn't like that action that you did. So it's not actually the person who is at fault and taking the personal abuse. It is the action of that person, which then I can relate to politicians and to everybody on every field, to hear between the words and the sentences, to hear what they are actually really saying may be something totally different to what they're actually saying.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So then you get the insight. You have people who have the insight and can get that naturally straight away because of their just loving, caring attitude. And it can also be taught to you. So you can learn how to hear what somebody is actually really saying. So therefore, for me, with politicians or with anyone, there's no excuse. Because if they're at that level, in my opinion only, then they need to have that skill of actually hearing what is being said, not the actual physical words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good point. But the thing is, you know that when you're a politician, you're in a very compromised environment. Even, for example, you will have people within the political arena who are very, very, very high-minded, altruistic. I think altruistic is the right word. Who considers others, considers the community at large, but they are subject to so many external forces and conditions, and things like politicians. They're juggling. At least they could be juggling like a dozen balls at any time. So, for example, you could have a particular issue where they've got their own perspective. So for example, there was something which was felt was very, very, very beneficial, gave a very high degree of social support. Could be maybe some kind of a medical clinic or a specialty, a specialist clinic for. It could be for disabled people or something similar. But because of the restrictions on the budget and lack of funding and possibly even opposition from some business group who basically want to take possession of that property. They've got their own personal perspective, which may be quite wholesome, but they have to deal with different groups and different forces and fiscal policy, and then they become compromised. So they within themselves, if you ask them privately, they may have a very, very clear, wholesome perspective, and they understand that we need this centre. They've done the research. They're junior people, have gathered and relayed the information, and they know that it's necessary in the local community. But you've got other forces at work which may oppose their wholesome intention. But it's a good point that, in a sense, when you're mixing with people in general, whether it's either professional or on a community level, that when you chit chat with people, to actually listen to the emotion, and listen to the, you have the words and then listen to the feeling behind the words, and that will give you a much more clear perspective on the person that you're connecting with. let's have a look. I'll get it right. Okay. So because the fool has these three characteristics of a fool, marks of a fool, manifestations of a fool. What three? Here, a fool thinks badly, speaks badly, acts badly. If the fool did not think badly, speak badly, act badly, how would wise people know of them? This fellow is a fool, a bad person. But because the fool thinks badly, speaks badly, acts badly, wise people know of them. This fellow is a fool, a bad person. These are the fool's three characteristics, the marks of a fool, the manifestations of a fool. The wise person has these three characteristics of a wise person, marks of a wise person, manifestations of a wise person. What three? Here a wise person thinks well. That's a funny word, thinks well, speaks well and acts well. If the wise person did not think well, speak well, act well, how would wise people know of him? This fellow is wise, a good person. But because the wise person thinks well, speaks well, acts well, wise people know of them. This fellow is wise, a good person. These are the wise person's three characteristics. Three characteristics of a wise person, marks of a wise person, manifestations of a wise person. Any opinions at all? Got nothing to say, Eddie? I may have to provoke you a little bit more. Let me think. Yeah, so with this whole principle of the wise person, within our own, religious, spiritual culture, that through the process of especially the meditation practice, with the developing samadhi and insight, that through the course, the development of the meditation, the person, an essential point is purifies their mind, and so you're developing peace of mind, you're developing purity of mind, and hopefully you're developing insight, which is at the same level. So regardless of where your samadhi is, that your insight needs to be at the same level every step of the way. If you're a beginner or you're like an advanced meditator who's been practicing for at least 20 to 30 years. But that principle of purity, of it, like ingrained purity of mind, where underlying defilements, which are the source of the fool's behaviour, they're essentially eradicated, and you can have people who are quite pure-minded, very 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 nice people, very kind people, but the wisdom faculty may not necessarily be at the same level, because people have different, with their karmic makeup, people are at different levels and they have a different mix of qualities. So you could get, say for example, a person who's let's say, like for example, a Christian, even easily over the course of 20, 30, 40 years, could be doing education for children, and even providing, even possibly, say, medical community support in different ways. That person has a degree of purity, of purity of sila, but not necessarily like insight, which is at the same level. Because in order to really reach genuine insight, you've got to meditate. You need your foundation in sila, to give you a basis for developing samadhi. Because if a person's mind is very, very, let's see now, very, for choice of better words, immoral, corrupt, flighty, unstable, this and that, it's very, very difficult to develop, sort of tranquility, develop stability of mind. And if the mind is just all over, say, if the mind is quite immoral, it's incredibly difficult for people to actually settle down and get those very, very deep states of peacefulness, because your mind is essentially a mirror. And because the monks are quite sensitive with this, that if they make mistakes with their sila, that they become aware of it very, very quickly, because even if you don't catch it right there and then, when the action's performed, and you feel no sense of, say, fear or shame, you don't feel any sense of like danger in the course of undertaking an unwholesome course of action. You don't feel the danger even as you're moving in that direction. There's no awareness of danger, and you don't feel any sense of guilt, worry, shame immediately after an unwholesome action's been executed. That when you go for the average person, average monastic, when you go to meditate, that transgression and that unconducive mind state is going to come up, and it's going to be right in your face, and that will it usually takes some time to settle down, and it makes the person very, very aware, because your mind is like a mirror. A person who's intrinsically good, of good character, they see themselves for what they are. They see their strengths and weaknesses, and the qualities and the limitations of the mind, with that aspect of self-awareness and accompanying insight. So, point 4, transgression. Bhikkhus, one who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a fool. What 3? He does not see his transgression as a transgression. When he sees his transgression as a transgression, he does not make amends for it in accordance with the Dhamma. When another person confesses a transgression to him, he does not accept it in accordance with the Dhamma. One who possesses these 3 qualities should be known as a fool. One who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a wise person. What 3? They see a transgression as a transgression. When they see a transgression as a transgression, they make amends for it in accordance with the Dhamma. When another person confesses a transgression to him, he accepts it in accordance with the Dhamma. One who possesses these 3 qualities should be known as a wise person. Therefore, it is in this way that you should train yourself. You should train yourselves thus. So, anyone got any opinions on that? Transgressions? Please, don't be shy.
Some people can perceive a transgression from, let's for instance say me, but I may not perceive it as a transgression. And so if I don't perceive it as a transgression, it's only that other person that sees that views it as a transgression. So why would I be responsible for that?
Righto. So essentially, it comes down to, say, like awareness on both sides. So for example, I'll talk in the first person. If I performed an unwholesome, if I behaved in an unwholesome way in conversation with someone, maybe I could have been rude or offensive or something like that, and I wasn't aware of it. But it's due to lack of self-awareness, lack of insight, that I don't even see that. I mean, the mind's very, very fast, but if especially meditators, you usually have at least a small awareness that that the direction you're going is not conducive to good human relationships. So you could have, but then again you can have compromised circumstances where a person could have a very, very intense emotional state, and they just completely explode, and the intuitive awareness thing just goes completely out the window. So the person doesn't see, they feel fully, when they just completely cut loose on you, they feel there's so much energy behind it, they feel fully justified. They could be sort of like very, very angry or even in a rage. They feel fully justified to tell you exactly what they think, and they may have no sense of danger in the way, in the direction that they're moving, or even sense of danger or concerns about repercussion, and no concerns about the way it's going to affect the second person. So you're looking at the full process. The person just completely loses it, and they lose their own perspective on themselves. They lose sight of themselves, where they're at. But if the other person doesn't see that, so for example, it's on a very subtle level, and the second person just doesn't see the transgression at all, that also comes from this lack of, for choice of better words, lack of intuitive insight. Because the more sensitive you are, you can especially if you've got really good samadhi. If you had something like the fourth jhana, I mean, you see every little twitch, every movement. You see a person. You could have a person 60, 70 years of age, and you will see behaviours in that person when they were potentially 10, 11, 12 years of age. And you know that for a fact. I'm not just talking off the top of my head here. It's a matter of you really see that person, I mean, crystal clear. From the time they were a child to the time when a child really starts to manifest very firm personality traits, and you can see that even at 70 years of age, you can see that person when they were 10 years old and they were neglected and the parents didn't pay much attention to them, and their father never, hardly spoke to them, and for years and years on end, because he was coming home drunk from the pub, and then he would just, you just walk in the door, and then, wouldn't even talk to the kids, and he'd just go crash out, and then he'd be off to work the next morning. So, that kind of potential is there. Eddie.
So and yeah, I think that phrase also means, like when someone points out to you, that what you do is that's like a mistake, okay? You don't have to admit the mistake, but at least you show appreciation. Oh, then you reflect this thing, instead of just brushing it away.
Yes. Can you give me an example? Make it very.
Oh, sorry.
Give me an example.
When someone tells you, oh, what you do is like not quite right, this thing, okay? You don't have to agree with the person, knowing, and like brushing the person away, thinking that the person is bad, okay? What you do is you acknowledge, oh yes, thank you for telling me this thing, okay? Then you use your own discretion, to work on it, instead of just turning a blind eye and pushing the person away.
Yes, I think I barely got that one, but yeah, maybe. Was that clear to everyone else? I didn't sort of I didn't catch that one.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if your intention is not to do harm to that other person, and you do not understand the background of that other person, and then that person reacts to what you have said in a manner that you feel is unjustified, then when the person who has reacted says, whatever it might be, insulting things to you because they're really angry with you saying whatever you said because it triggered something in them, that is not, for instance, my responsibility. That is the person who was triggered, their responsibility to own their emotions around that. Now, I can turn around and say, well, look, I do apologise if it has upset you. It wasn't meant to, that was not the intention. However, it is still that other person's responsibility to own, yes, you triggered me, yes, I got angry, and it's because of whatever it might be. But that doesn't mean to say that I have transgressed. It just means to say that I have said something which, with the intent of it being kind, caring, the other person has misconstrued and then taken it on a totally different path.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because we don't, because we're not inside other people's minds. We don't know exactly where they're at. So sometimes with any of us, sometimes we have to. Even the monks have to do this. They have to check in with each other if there's a misunderstanding, and because all of us, we're working with our own. Each person's working with their own defilements. And sometimes you don't have any, because of the lack of clarity, you don't have any choice. You have to speak with that person and say, look, there was a misunderstanding, or we had some crossed words, and I really just I didn't understand what your perspective was and why you were getting why this becomes such an issue. So you get some clarity and an understanding, and even if you both completely disagree with each other. It can diffuse any underlying emotional intensity, because you talk it over, you come to some understanding, and even if you agree to disagree, it's still quite okay, because there's a degree of like cordiality between you, even if you're at completely opposite ends of the, say like an opinion or perspective.
Yes, as long as they have a certain amount of awareness, each of those individuals has a certain amount of personal self-awareness. That works really well. But, there's a lot of times that a lot of people do not have that personal self-awareness, and bang, that's when it can explode. And you sit back and you go, what happened there?
Yeah.
And then understand that, this is what happened, and then you can apologise sincerely for upsetting them, because that's what you mean, that's you really mean you have apologised for upsetting them. However, you do not need to apologise or feel that you have transgressed in any way by saying what you said. That is the other person's responsibility.
Yeah, that's true. You fulfilled your I can't think of the right words. Yeah, you fulfilled your wholesome on it. Whatever, regardless of the circumstances, that you give the person some clarity from your perspective, and they take it for I wouldn't say for better or worse, but they take it on board, and they process it. And hopefully they may it may be of some potential value to them. Nicholas, do you need the mic, Nicholas? You're quite a soft.
I just had an idea. I agree with what the ladies have said and what you've said, that I think in the lay world there has to be...
Talk closely.
Like in the lay world, there has to be that clarity that some people's stuff is theirs, and you're responsible for your own behaviour and actions and impacts. But what crossed my mind is that in the monastic setting it's a bit different, because in some of the suttas you've had the senior disciples, like one of them, I can't remember which one, was apologising to a novice for having his robe in a certain way, and that senior monk was totally not at fault, but as a training in how forgiveness should be, free-flowing. He apologised to that novice, even though the novice was just totally impudent. So I think it's a bit different, it's important not to be too willing to see faults in yourself, but in some settings, like in that monastic situation, there was a teaching there about the importance to allow forgiveness to flow very freely, regardless of who's right and wrong.
Yeah, that particular event where Sariputta was admonished by a novice on Bindabat, that was the source of the the Sakya rule, where the lower robe, the sabong, has to be worn like evenly around the body, not only just sitting evenly on the waist, but also the length, being correct as well. But that particular, the rule structure with the Sakyas, they're not confessionable offences. They're the right words is they are like rules to be trained in, but they're not actually rules that you actually confess at the Patimokkha when we do the recitation. So you got the so that the major four grades, the Prajika, Sanghadasesa, the Tulachaya, Pachitya, and Tukata, and there's a number of grades. Say 6 in total. And then you have the Sakyas, which are rules to be observed, which came up. Many of the causal events for the Sakya rules were when monks were actually, I'd say, like moving in public, sitting in public, eating in public, and the behaviour and the decorum was, say, like unsettling or potentially offensive to the people who were being. So who like observing the monks doing the whatever activity they were involved in. So, but yeah, many of the rules are depending on the category and circumstances. They were formulated after largely the lay disciples complained. So either in the local community or to the Buddha that the monks were, just like misbehaving or being inappropriate or being like too greedy and this type of thing. So the Buddha had to formulate a rule to essentially keep the monks in check, because and the nuns as well, who even have a more extensive rule system for us, and many of those rules are there for their personal protection because of the vulnerability of being female. And men, especially if they're living alone, they've got more potential to look after themselves. Females are more vulnerable to violation and attack, and they have more personal, nuances for their well-being. And looking at where if anyone misbehaves, whether it's monastic or the lay disciple, the causal basis is the underlying defilements in the mind, greed, hatred, delusion, which can take absolutely tens of thousands of forms, and essentially, this is the reason why we talk about this, like purity of mind, developing, undercutting these underlying forces and energies in the mind, because they're the basis of unwholesome actions, they say, through the body, speech, and mind. Yep.
Going back to characteristic and thinking, these two are essentially, to me, is the same. You say
just talk a bit closer to the mic, nice and close.
These two are essentially the same. Do you think these two are essentially the same? Under characteristic and thinking, you say it's a bad bodily, what is it? A fool thinks badly, speaks badly, and acts badly. And under the characteristic, it also says the qualities of the fool is mental misconduct and verbal misconduct and bodily misconduct. They are just repeating the same thing, isn't it? Do you agree?
Yeah, slightly different.
What's the difference?
Difference between what behaving badly and
under the previous one, characteristic and thinking.
Characteristic,
And thinking.
And then thinking. So what you just want a clarification? What thinking badly?
Yeah, thinks badly, speaks badly, and acts badly.
You want me to clarify it, or?
It's exactly the same as the what you call mental misconduct, verbal misconduct, and bodily misconduct.
Yeah. Essentially, with the formula, they're just explaining things with a slightly different, virtually slightly different slant. So you're looking at a very like a mode of behaviour, and then you're just using different words. It's like a different take on the person's personal behaviour. So say for example, they're talking about the fool here, but you could explain. You could give examples to the behaviour of a fool in maybe even 3, 4, half a dozen different ways. So they're just with the word. They use this repetitive word formula, but you can have slightly different slants and a slightly different take. It's just a different the way they use the language, different way they use the. Between characteristics and thinking. Well, characteristics is more like, I think it really, they're just using a different like language, the way they're explaining it, because the actual process is the same. If you have the foolish person, the wise person, you're looking at the behaviour, regardless of on whatever level, time and place. Whether you call it wholesome, unwholesome, misconduct, good conduct, transgression, non-transgression. They're just using a slightly different slant with the language, really, to explain the same thing. It's not hard to understand, unwholesome thinking, speech, bodily action. All of us have a fairly good. It's quite clear to the vast majority of us. So it's a slightly different slant, the way they explain it. A different way of looking. Different way of looking at the mental state, the speech, and the bodily action. So you're looking at those primary behaviours, those primary, modes of behaviour: thinking, speech, bodily action, and they're using different modes of actually looking, like transgression in the relation of misconduct of, say, sila. You're looking at examples of how that behaviour is manifested. The transgression comes up when you talk the transgression in relation to a second person. It is possible to a person can transgress within themselves. Say, for example, if I start eating in the afternoon, I could be alone. I could be in a hut, a kuti somewhere. I could be at home with mum and dad, and then I might start to maybe start cooking, steak and chips in the evening, or pizza, or spaghetti. I could develop a real taste for these things, and whip out the cookbooks and whatnot, get creative. But there's no witnesses, no one can see me, but I've still transgressed within myself as far as the rule structure, the monks' Patimokkha training. But no one else is. The only person who's witness to that is me, and that's right. Yeah, that's right. It could be both sides. If you're talking with me and then you say something incredibly outrageous, and then you push my buttons, and then I react with, I may start to argue with you. Then you'll be hopefully you're potentially becoming aware of my behaviour. So you're affecting your behaviour is if you press my buttons, you're going to make me behave in a certain way. If that makes any sense at all. Yeah, it's okie dokie. Carelessly. Bhikkhus, one who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a fool. What 3? He formulates a question carelessly. He replies to a question carelessly when another person replies to a question carefully, with well-rounded and coherent words and phrases. He does not approve of it. One who possesses these 3 qualities should be known as a fool. One who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a wise person. What 3? He formulates a question carefully. he replies to a question carefully. When another person replies to a question carefully with well-rounded, these words are quite interesting, well-rounded and coherent words and phrases, he approves of it. One who possesses these three qualities should be known as a wise person. So has anyone got a take on that one? I'm not sure if I have, but good on you, good on you.
Maybe I use that one.
Yep.
So to me, it seems like a bit different to all the rest. It seems a bit out of place, this paragraph, because everything is about acting badly, hurting other people, speaking badly, lying, stuff like that. And then this is about asking questions. I mean, I could carelessly ask a stupid question, like maybe, for example, this one. And then, I don't feel that would fit in as being a fool or something. So maybe you could say something about that. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, but I mean, this one's not such a bad one, because this business about, asking a question. Say, for example, the one, if I try to be very specific, the fool formulates a question carelessly. He replies to a question carelessly. When another person replies to a question carefully with well-rounded and coherent words and phrases, he does not approve of it. One who possesses these three qualities should be known as a fool. So they formulate a question carelessly. So, but you could have a number of underlying qualities to the mind state. So, for example, if I put it in the first person, I formulate a question carelessly. On what basis? I could have lack of knowledge, lack of intelligence, lack of insight. I could have a communication limitation. I could be even things like I could be borderline. What would you call? I can't think of the right words. Or I could be autistic. I could be mildly autistic. I could have a borderline psychological condition, which affects my communication with other people. So, especially with language, I mean, sometimes we have to be really quite sharp. Otherwise, the meaning can get lost. So the fool formulates a question carelessly potentially from a number of bases. He replies to a question carelessly from a number of bases. When another person replies to a question carefully with well-rounded and coherent words and phrases, he does not approve of it. But it doesn't mean, even if you get someone who's incredibly wise, capable, very articulate, this and that, it does not mean that you have to approve of what that person says, no matter how incredible it is. Because people's makeup is incredibly complicated. You may completely disagree. You can have a person who's right and correct in what they say, but you still have a basis to propose an opposing point of view or an argument in the sense of increasing knowledge and understanding. Because I know one person who was quite well educated, travelled the world, this and that, and this person would invite his friends and associates to his house for dinner parties, and he was a very, very good cook, and he really liked to invite absolute minimum 4, 6, 8 people for for a dinner party, for a nice meal with drinks and dessert and the full business. But one thing he would do was that even with any particular individual in the group who came to the house, even if he agreed with a person's point of view completely, he would actually in conversation with the dynamics, the conversational dynamics, he would actually take the opposite perspective and actually argue argue against this person's point of view, just to stimulate the conversation in the group. Because, say for example, if you're talking with me and then you agree with everything that I propose, then the conversations, it's going to be there's not going to be much energy there. It's going to be a bit flat, and eventually it's just going to die away. But if you have people who are contentious, who have opposing points of view, or their minds are a little bit more flexible, and they can look at things from 6, 7, I wouldn't actually, exaggeration, at least 3, 4, 5 different perspectives. We have one topic we're discussing, but we can approach the topic from 5 different perspectives. So even you can choose to agree or disagree, but you can still give an opportunity there to increase knowledge and understanding on whatever we're talking about.
Can I just mention something here that it occurs to me when it says he formulates a question carelessly? Would it not be better perhaps the word of thoughtlessly?
Thoughtlessly. You could thoughtlessly.
As opposed to careless.
Yeah, thoughtlessly. It might be. I mean, for some people, it may be the language might be more specific, because we're looking at things on the level of thought construction. So if you have an idea, a view, an opinion, it's coming from a process of thought construction in the mind. So we're being a bit more specific with the language, because it's like, for example, if I say, I do something carelessly. I mean, what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm not interested? Does it mean that I'm bored? Does it mean that I'm not concerned? Or I could have 3 or 4 personal perspectives on this aspect of lack of care and concern. I could have 3 or 4 different perspectives on that. But that point of the person. I lost it. Formulates a thought carelessly, or sort of thought. Say, all right, we'll take it from your perspective. Thoughtlessly, and but from my the way I see it, I would say if you're looking at a mind experience, it could be a combination of factors. It could be lack of inner awareness. So I'm thinking. I've got a particular thought pattern. Say rolling, or I'm thinking in a certain way, but if I'm not fully aware of what I'm thinking of, where I'm coming from, the actual content, I could have a limited understanding. I could have a limited knowledge on say a particular idea I have. I could have communication limitations. I could even have even within my own brain. I could even have even some kind of structural abnormality between my hemispheres, which makes say for example, I try to explain something to you, but to me it makes sense, but to you it might be completely incomprehensible. Because my brain's just not functioning directly. I could have a neurological disorder, so there could be a number of underlying, very specific underlying causes why I don't have, say, full awareness and articulation of what I'm trying to say. Okay, unwholesome bhikkhus. One who possesses 3 qualities should be here we go. One who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a fool. What 3? Unwholesome bodily action, unwholesome verbal action, and unwholesome mental action. One who possesses these 3 qualities should be known as a fool. One who possesses 3 qualities should be known as a wise person. What 3? wholesome bodily action, wholesome verbal action, wholesome mental action. One who possesses these three qualities should be known as a wise person. Therefore, it is in this way that one should train oneself. It's quite, it's quite funny. It's quite funny in a sense because when I, the electronic version that I had of this I had the impression that it was actually different to what we've got here. So, this wasn't. This may not have been exactly what I was after, but I think we can work it. I've got to double check. I could be wrong, but I'm not. I'll double check. There's no one in particular, nobody's fault. Right. Yeah. So if we. All right. So if we look at the like a wholesome course of action, a wholesome course of action, which when you look at the level of right thought with the Noble Eightfold Path, Buddhist system of training, that wholesome. Wholesome thoughts in the mind are based in non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, which is loving kindness, compassion, and renunciation. So that they're the component factors of a wholesome thought in the mind. And then, say, like wholesome speech. There's a number of examples that wholesome speech is based in a sense of say, for example, if you wanted to speak to somebody in a wholesome way, there was 5 underlying factors from memory, and you speak at the right time, you speak at the right occasion, you speak with a mind of kindness, you speak with that second person's welfare in mind, and you don't. I think you don't speak from, say, like a mind of anger or hatred. I'm not sure if there's another one there. There was five underlying factors when you, say, for example, when you admonish another person, but those particular qualities are transferable. When you're in dialogue with others, because if I take the opposite perspective, I'm talking with people and I'm unkind. I choose the wrong time and place. I come from a mind of anger. I don't have your welfare in mind, and so it's not going to, whatever I say to you, it's essentially going to have a bad effect. The second person may be so highly developed that they can. It may be like water off a duck's back, but many people wouldn't. I don't think wouldn't appreciate that kind of approach.
So, is that saying then that we should just pause for reflection before we
Yeah. So
before we even go down a course of thinking or speaking or acting, and just check look a bit more deeply into the motivation or the intention as to whether,
if you go,
am I actually trying to harm someone, like stick it to them a little bit, or am I actually trying to be helpful or harmful?
If you look at, say for example, within your own mind, you look at the like a thought process in the making. So the mind's pretty fast. So if you're able, as soon, say for example, you could be in dialogue with someone, and as soon as a thought arises, and you become aware of that, you can track it. You can track it from the point, like the point that it arises, as it develops, and breaks out into speech. But the faster you are in, essentially it's a combination of mind, of speed, but you can actually train yourself to do this. You can actually catch mind states before they, what would it like, take full force, you know. So if you catch it early and you see the content, and you choose the appropriate course of action. So say for example, I could have something like I'm in discussion with someone, and then an antagonistic thought comes up. You know, the thoughts, it's coloured by this antagonistic feeling, and I might want to provoke this person or stir them up, and so the thought, if you can get it within the first 1/3 to half a second, you've got a chance, because with anyone, the mind speed is very, 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 very quick. So you catch it, and you can see that it's moving in the wrong direction. So I catch it quite early, and I can see that I'm feeling antagonistic. I'm going to provoke that person, but then once I've got it in check, and I think, well, can I choose a more wholesome, say, course of action, and then I can choose to, maybe to soften my speech or take a slightly less forceful perspective, or I could say things like, well, I can see, I can understand where you're coming from, but I have a completely different take on this. And I can give you my opinion, but I'm making you aware that I'm taking your point of view into consideration, but I'm making you aware as well that I completely disagree with the perspective you're coming from. So I'm not saying I'm an expert in this area, but it's a matter of catching the thought processes, the thought process quite early, and then. And actually seeing what direction it's moving in, and then taking the appropriate course of action. But it's not such an easy thing to do, because we're just bombarded with so much. Even when we're talking with someone, I mean, sometimes we just can't keep up with what's going on in the mind. So to watch yourself and watch that other person at the same time. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. It's like you've got to be razor sharp. I was in conversation with a gentleman the other day. He was introduced by one of the long-term lay disciples, and this guy told me that his mind was so fast that this is not an uncommon thing, especially for people who are very experienced in IT. He had 3 screens, and he was working. He was doing investments, stocks and bonds and this and that, 3 large screens, and on the telephone as well. And the guy was able to make split-second decisions and answer the phone at the same time. So, realistically, in reality, that gentleman can only think of one thing at a time. With a human being, you can only think with the mind process. When your mind moves through the experience of the 4 mental, the 5 aggregates, form, and then the 4 mental aggregates. In reality, you can only think of one thing at a time. But some people's minds are incredibly fast, and they can switch from one thing to another, even maybe even in a quarter to a third of a second. And I've had one engineer, German engineer, very smart guy, said, I can think of 2 or 3 things at the same time, but it's not true. You just may. But if your mind is just like lightning, that's you may think that out of conceit. It's a form of arrogance, conceit. But the reality is, because we know better. When it comes to mind science, that the Buddhists, in reality, we may have a better understanding and a better take on this than many psychologists people, scientists who study the mind, who study behaviour, who study cerebral function. I'm not saying that we have as much information as they have, but when it comes down to tin tac's really very, very specific core principles like aggregates and thinking process and karma and memory and retrocognition and this kind of thing, we know within the Buddhist fraternity we have a much better perspective on this than even some scientists who've spent their whole lives studying this kind of thing. Because we're drawing on the Buddha's experience, and the Buddha had the full understanding of the workings of the human mind. No one understood the human mind more effectively than the Buddha did. What time is it? It's 4:31. Let me think. What I'll do is I'll just do this last section. The stains. Bhikkhus, possessing 3 qualities and without having abandoned 3 stains, one is deposited in hell as if brought there. What 3? One is immoral and has not abandoned the stain of immorality. One is envious and has not abandoned the stain of envy. One is miserly and not abandoned the stain of miserliness. Possessing these 3 qualities and without having abandoned these 3 stains, one is deposited in hell as if brought there. Bhikkhus, possessing 3 qualities and having abandoned 3 stains, one is deposited in heaven as if brought there. What 3? One is virtuous and has abandoned the stain of immorality. One is not envious and has abandoned the stain of envy. One is not miserly and has abandoned the stain of miserliness. Possessing these 3 qualities and having abandoned these 3 stains, one is deposited in heaven as if brought there. Have you guys got any perspective on that? Before and for Nick. Has got the mic for Nick?
Just with that passage, just wondering why it goes to the neutral rather than the positive of these. So it goes like, instead of going generous, it says not miserly. I'm just wondering why it treats as the opposite. What
the previous one's using? What, yeah. General terms?
Yeah. Why was it?
Why and this one.
That the best option?
Why there wasn't more? What specific options or?
So in the text, it was just read there.
Yeah, this last section.
So fool would be miserly, and then it was a wise person would not be miserly, rather than generous or something like that. So just wondering why.
Yeah. So yeah, they've got a. I think what, let's see, because possessing 3 qualities when having abandoned 3 stains, one is important. So yeah, you're looking at a slightly. So this is quite obvious to everyone. One is immoral and has not abandoned the stain of immorality. Virtually all of you understand that, where you have infractions of sila. This immorality in relation to the inability to sustain a minimum quality of sila. One is envious and has not abandoned the stain of envy. Envious. So with envy, that how does it feel? If I'm envy of others, I'm envy of something. They could have wealth. They could have material possessions. They could have personal qualities. They could be a very charming person, very popular, and I am envious of those things which I don't have myself. One is miserly and has not abandoned the stain of miserliness. So what is if I'm miserly, that I'm not generous, that I could be a person who hoards, who likes to collect and accrue possessions, and I don't want to share. I don't want to be generous with others. So it's like a sense of like being like small-heartedness. People who have very, very big, who are very big-hearted, it's very easy. The heart's like, it's big. The heart's soft, it's open. They don't find it difficult to share, to care, to help, support others, to give what they have. If they have extra things to give to poor people, to give to their family and friends. they're not, they're able to rise above that state of miserliness or say that constricted small-heartedness. Is there any last opinions before we wrap it up? Anything else at all? Okay, thank you kindly for your wise engagement.